Na bondeli yo moninga ofingi ngai pamba mobali wana ye moko alingi ngai mingi na mokili oyo mwasi ya kobenga mobali te ye moko ayaki na ndako na ngai nayambi ye. Mwasi ya kobenga mobali te ye moko ayaki na ndako na ngai nayambi ye. Bandeko atatika kofinga ngai nazali na likambo te o mama ye moko mipesi nyonso na ngai foti yanga te ya ye moko soko ozali na likambo motema nzela ya biro ezali pamba mama kasi ya kodongola ngai na nzela te likambo nalingi te o. Soko zali na likambo motema nzela ya biro ezali pamba mama kasi ya kodongola ngai na nzela te likambo nalingi te o. Eba oh mama yangana yo bane kwa tadi natali ya pamba di mami bane kwa tadi.
Good afternoon and good morning or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this discussion, follow-up discussion on modern heritage of Africa. I would like to start by greeting my co-host, Professor Edward Denison. Hi, Edward, how are you? So nice to see you again. I would also like to thank the different partners and all our sponsors, the Getty Conservation Institute, the Bartlett School at UCL, the University of Cape Town, the World Heritage Center, the Africa Unit, and ICROM and many others. Last week, we had a very productive session built on two great keynote presentations. And then there was a follow-up of very rich and informative discussions afterwards. So subsequent to that, a few of us met and came up with the draft document, which subject to all our input and continuous engagement will become the Cape Town document on modern heritage that was emailed to you. So it is a document in progress. It is a work in progress. So our hope is that we will collectively improve on it as we go along. So just to say one or two things about the current draft document, there are one or two guiding principles that we might want to keep in mind when reading or thinking through the document. The first is that the current draft, or we hope, the Cape Town document on modern heritage will take its spirit from the NARA document on authenticity. We also anticipate that This document will be on modern heritage of Africa, but it will be applied to influence understandings, conceptions, and the like of modern heritage in the world. So our starting point, we are in Africa, but where we want to go is for this document to influence the whole world as far as modern heritage is concerned. And this raises a number of issues as far as the strategy is concerned, and this is part of what we will discuss. So the document that was circulated or emailed to you has a number of points that came from the keynote presentations, as well as the inputs that we all collectively made. So one of the things that we will be asking is what do we need to change? And also, what sort of ideas do we need to challenge? And how do we challenge them? And also in terms of approach and going forward. So based on the discussions we had last week, it was expressed strongly that European conceptions of modernity do not apply to Africa, for example. How do we challenge that? Do we take it one step at a time, or do we move gradually, or do we say that this is us based in Africa and this is our position and lobby for that? So that has implications in terms of how we progress from here. So just to summarize the document, then the first page is the preamble. We'll give you an opportunity to offer your reflections in terms of whether you think we need to add anything, subtract anything, or the like. But then we also have more important or more pertinent to the business of the day. We have 7 main headings, which have the different bullet points. So we will be going through each one of them, having some very short discussions, and we would want to hear from you. Do you strongly agree that we need to keep them? Do you think that we need to take them out? Or are you of a neutral position? And then if you also have some references, bibliographies that you think are necessary, would you please kindly post that on the chat? Edward, do you want to say anything?
No, you've covered everything, I think, Shadrach. Besides perhaps just some housekeeping, that obviously there's a lot of points to get through. Based on the responses that we've had so far, thank you for those of you that have sent through your Excel spreadsheets. Some of you who are not able to attend today have done that already. We believe there's probably a broad consensus on most of the points, but we'll obviously not know that until we go through this afternoon or this morning, wherever you are in the world. So we'll try and be quite brisk through each of the bullet points, and keep it to no more than 2 or 3 minutes per one. But there might be occasions where we have to debate them a little bit more. And if there isn't a consensus, we do have the facility for an online poll. So our conference organizers have very kindly arranged that. And if that's the case, we're trying it for the first time, so be patient with us. We will put that particular bullet point to a poll, and people will be able to respond either by strongly agreeing, strongly disagreeing, or expressing their neutrality on the subject. And that way we'll be able to record live what people's views are. So we're looking forward to some debates as we go, but I think there's approximately 60 or so bullet points to get through. So we've got 2 hours, just under 2 hours to do that. So we appreciate your brevity. Thank you.
And also, may I take this opportunity to express on behalf of the Modern Heritage of Africa collective our heartfelt condolences over the passing on of Professor Munjeri's wife. May her soul rest in peace. And those of you might know that Professor Munjeri is not new in terms of the World Heritage or African Heritage circles. We had him during the Modern Heritage of Africa. We hope that he will find the comfort that he needs during this very difficult time. So, Edward, are you sharing your screen or I'm sharing my screen?
I can share my screen, Shadow. I could take the burden off you. So 1 second.
Okay, thank you. So if we start with point number 1 on the preamble, is there anything that you think we need to amend, change, or add or subtract?
I have my hand up.
Is there any hand up?
Hola.
I have my hand up. I think Docomomo needs to be one of your advisory bodies.
Okay, thank you. Edward, can we add Docomomo? Or although it's on point number 3. Okay, that's a different document. So up here, let's have Docomomo. We can clean it up later.
Okay, I'm going to make those put the comments into my notes, not live on the document, and then I will insert them later. So I've made that. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks. Any other viewpoints?
Yes. Hi, Shadrach. It's Laura. Sorry, let me put my camera on. Just in terms of the comment about the advisory bodies, I think it's important to note that Docomomo is not an advisory body. So we just need to say advisory bodies as well as Docomomo if we want to include Docomomo in the first point.
Okay, thanks for that.
Just to be technically correct.
Thank you for that clarification. That helps a lot because the language also has to be good. And there's also the point that we need to include the names of ICOMOS, ICROM, IUCN in full, and then abbreviate that to be technically correct, as Laura suggests. Thank you for that comment, Alice. How about point number 2? If I don't hear any interventions, then I will move to number 3. Are there any other guiding documents, frameworks that we need to add? For UCT high up, we need to add UCT in brackets for consistency. I hope you picked that on the chat, Edward.
Got it.
Shadrach.
Hello.
Yeah, I would say in number 3, we need also to make a reference of historical urban landscape somewhere because we are also celebrating 10th anniversary of urban landscape. So we can put it not, and then we'll find a way to add that one.
Thank you so much for that.
I would second that, absolutely.
Historic urban landscape, Edward, did we capture that?
Got that, yeah.
Point number 3, any comments, concerns, suggestions for improvements?
I just sent through a note to you, I think, about the specific names of the ICOMOS 20th century document, the Madrid New Delhi document, just for accuracy's sake, the name of that document and the name of the framework document. So it's a technicality.
Thank you so much.
Just from me again, Shadrach, There is also the NARA +20 document, which was updated recently in Africa and Cape Town. So maybe we can just include the NARA document on authenticity plus the NARA +20, or including NARA +20 development of the document. I think it's relevant. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. We have captured that. Point number 4. And there's also a comment on the chat that we need to include the dates for the 2 NARA documents, 1994 and 2016 or thereabout. NARA 20 plus, if my memory still serves me right. How about point number 4? Moreover, climate change and biodiversity loss caused by anthropogenic activities that have been concentrated in the past and which characterize the modern needs to be urgently addressed to achieve a sustainable postmodern future. Shahid?
Okay, hope people can see me, I hope, and can hear me. So
Yes.
It's the question around the postmodern. I think, and I don't know if Isha Lawson is here, but she raised an issue around this as to whether we can talk about the postmodern or, in my view, just talk about late modern. I mean, I have my views as to why we should just talk about the modern and not postmodern.
And what is that view?
Because the modern is coloniality is part of the modern, and coloniality is still with us. We can't really talk about the postmodern. It's a misnomer. So I would just say late modern.
There was a point that modern is specific to a generation. So in other words, Rome was once modern.
Well, it definitely was. And the part that I'm sitting in is definitely also a bit more modern. Could I recommend that we just get rid of the complete the words post and modern and just say future? Just leave it on
sustainable future.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Future.
Okay, thank you. Number 5. To confront these challenges, the Cape Town document on modern heritage builds on existing interdisciplinary knowledge and advocates new creative approaches. Point 6. Do we need to add some more framework documents, or these ones are enough? Shahid?
I think it's an ICOMOS document called Culture in the Implementation of the 2030 Agenda. And I think the introduction deals with a plethora of UN and UNESCO documents, conferences, campaigns that link all this together. And we might just want to look at that carefully. And
okay, thank you. And Olga says that she has emailed detailed comments to Janet, so we will be able to integrate them afterwards. Laura, I can see your hand.
Yeah, thanks. Would this be appropriate to add the Ngorongoro Declaration here on heritage and sustainable development?
I don't see any reason why we cannot do that, because it's
good.
also another declaration coming out of Africa.
I think it's relevant here.
Any other thoughts on point number 6, or we move on to the detailed subheadings?
Just mentioning also Dawson, because he had immediately after the NARA document, there was an African interpretation experts meeting, which I think might be useful, but I think we should, I'm not saying it should be there, but perhaps the drafting group could just look at it and see whether it is relevant.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And how are you today? All right, can we scroll down? Okay, so we start with number one, and we have to be a little bit quick here. So in terms of the definitions and meaning of modern heritage, do we feel that we should retain the spirit of these bullet points? Is there anything we need to change, delete, amend, or we keep things as they are? The typology of modern heritage in Africa should embody transformations happening in Africa and not governed by the events or materials of industrialism. Identity should be an essential component, being about the sense of belonging. It is an open-ended movement or motion that is self-refashioning. So also thinking beyond architectural classification, modern in time, place, and type.
Just one thing, this is Ola.
Yes, go ahead.
I wonder whether we should say in the first, it should not be only governed by, because the thing is that it was in, so that's point one, yes. So I would just put only, so not only governed by, because I think the point is that it's very contextual, but certainly it shouldn't be only governed by that, that some of the issues across the Atlantic did have an influence on Africa. Thank you.
Thanks, got that.
Modern heritage of Africa needs to be liberated from the Western assumptions of temporality, chronology, and linear time, which were claimed to be universal. The terms modern, modernism, and modernity are complicated. Africa has no single history, but multiple historical trajectories. We need to redeem the concept of modernity to suit our own experiences. Is there anything that could be missing in terms of thinking about meanings?
I think Shadrach, it encapsulates what we were talking about very well. I think just the word redeem is a little odd.
Well, we need to redeem, okay.
Redefine, possibly. But I'm sure that was just because you guys were so busy trying to capture the thoughts.
Yeah, we hope that a proper language wash will be performed after, you know, after all the ideas are in there.
For sure.
Thanks for that.
Ola, did you have a question?
Sorry, that's an old hand, but maybe reclaim. I don't know. But no, it's an old hand. I'll take it down if it's up. I don't know. No, it's not there.
No, it's okay.
Shadrach.
Hello.
Yeah, Mohammed here. There's that point that you said, you know, in your introduction, that our target also is of course, we define modernity in Africa, but we think we are looking for the principle that also will inspire, that will be also important for other continents. So for other, you know, other communities. So I think in the meaning, that idea has to be there also.
Okay, fantastic.
So I don't know how we'll put it, but you know, it's now I see we are only focused more in Africa, but and then what about Latin America? What about Asia? What about you know, Europe as well? You know, because what we want is our definition to help them to go out of that linearity as well. So I think in our meaning of modernity, that element has to be there. I don't know how to formulate it, but or maybe it's in yeah. That's my thought.
No, that's a very important point, which I'm sure we could work on. I think Edward has taken the note, so we could edit and then see how best to phrase it so that the spirit of what you are saying is captured, because we don't want to lose it.
Yeah, it's an essential point. Do you think the language, like, for example, suit our own experiences? is referencing too closely a particular experience and should be spoken more generally. I mean, that sort of language we can refine later on, but maybe it's framing it in a context which, as you say, is too limited, and we should be thinking more globally or planetarily, as Dipesh mentioned last week.
So yeah, that would work. Mohammed, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think that kind of idea, yeah.
Okay. Moving on to the modern. Globally, modernity is defined by scholars today as a set of things embedded in social changes that were inspired by industrialization, wage labor, factory systems, etc. However, there's that in some parts of Africa, we were already familiar with city life before colonialism. Yet in Europe, modernity was mostly inspired by industrialization. Do we have any thoughts on this, which is just maybe stating the fact that the way in which we talk about modernity is geography and place dependent, as well as time dependent. It depends on whether you're in Europe, Africa, and based on what Mohammed was saying, in Latin America or in Asia. Modernity articulates conscious departure from the past.
Shadrach, sorry, if I can just say something, I was just reading the first bullet point. It's not completely clear to me. We're also talking about urbanism and urbanization when we think about industrialization in the European sense. So possibly we could articulate what we're trying to say a little differently. I haven't got a suggestion, but it's just something that came to my mind when I started to read those few lines. Mike looks like he's got the answer.
That's a good point. That, in fact, this bullet point came in because of Achilles' note about the differences of urbanization. So, and I think that this is really a critical point. Again, we're not giving the exact text here in this session. The whole idea is to get the spirit, which are the bullet points which are critical, and then there'll be the second time round. I'd just like to also add is that there'll be, each month, there'll be another series of activities. So we've got another 2 or 3 months of debate, which will take place, and the final draft document will be at the UCT conference in September. So I think the way forward is just to make the points over here where we are actually going to bring in a text which will give the content to this document. Over.
Yes, Joe?
Yeah, sorry. Sorry to break in here. I'm wondering, I think urbanization I think that is a concept that needs to go in here for under modernity. I agree with that. The second thing that I would mention also is that it's also defined by uses of new materials, because let's not forget, we are talking about heritage here. So part of it is industrialization and factory systems and wage labor and all that, I agree. But I think also it is new uses of materials and using new materials in our, in how we construct our spaces and our places and our buildings. So I think somehow or another that also needs to get put into here.
And old materials in a new way.
Also. Well, that's true, because concrete actually exists back from long before. That's true, but yes, that's true.
Okay, so we can work on the phrasing there. So modernity articulates conscious departure from the past, and modernity entails antagonism between the individual and the community, where the individual unshackles him herself from the community. Modernity in Africa recognizes that the continent. Sorry, Shahid. Shahid, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just unmuting myself. Could we just bring that down again so that I could? Modernity into. I just want to be careful about the word antagonism between individual and community. There's always been a sense of individual and community. So we can't say that it was always antagonism. Mm-hmm. So we might want to think of a different way of putting that. It might be that modernity entails a distinction between individual and community.
Okay, that's fine. There is a suggested word from Laura: disjuncture. Entails modernity entails disjuncture between the individual and the community. The individual unshackles him herself from the community. But we can work. We can work on the phrasing later. But thanks for highlighting that. Modernity in Africa recognizes the continent of complexity and historicity. So how best to define African modern heritage as an inclusive modern heritage? And perhaps also Mohammed's point would also apply here in terms of a broad being African-centered, but with a broad-based focus that speaks to the human experience. Modernity engages social changes such as urbanization, industrialization, wage labor. This seems to reinforce what we already discussed, and that there are plural modernities. We need to differentiate. We need to differentiate ours in Africa. There's some grammar that needs the panel beating there, but the spirit is plural modernities, which would also apply to different places. Yes, Shahid.
Again, we're picking up on small words or big words that make, or small words that make big difference. I mean, I think that industrialization is a specific form of economic systems. I mean, industrialization is associated with capitalism. But what I think we wanted to mean here, that modernity engages in social changes such as manufacturing, because manufacturing exists over long periods of time in different places. And industrialization is very specific.
The Romans were manufacturing, remember, those manufactories in, Rome and the other places in the province, Gaul and
yeah,
stuff
exactly.
Like that.
Wouldn't we call the gold from Southern Africa to the rest of the world prior to colonialism a form of manufacture?
Yeah, it is, and yeah, I understand. I get the point. I'm sure Edward has taken the note. Industrialization. What conceptual baggage does it carry? Do we need to have manufacturing there, or making, or what does that mean? I can see the name by Eritrea. Sorry, I can't see your name, my friend.
Yeah, okay.
You have the floor.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. I'm Midhane. So maybe just under this heading, I would like to add technological infrastructures.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, so technological infrastructure is also one of the modernity, like transport sectors, like railway infrastructures and others, like cable cars. So this is part of a modernity. So if we can add technological infrastructure also, it could be more inclusive. That's my, okay. look at it in your side, and then that's my point. It means.
Thanks, Medhani.
Yeah.
Hey, Medhani, good to hear your voice. Thanks for that.
Okay, thank you.
I've noted it.
Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, infrastructures. That's an important
Technological
addition.
infrastructure. Yeah.
Thank you. Is it possible to scroll up a bit?
Shadrach, we had one point from Jeff Cody, who was just highlighting our different use of the term industrialism and industrialization.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to be consistent? Is there a need for a distinction there? If so, would anyone like to speak to those distinctions? I'm not sure why they are distinct in the document.
I didn't think about it. Mike, do you want to give a go? Mike Turner,
yeah,
do you want to rescue? Do you want to rescue us?
No, no. I think that was something which I also wanted just to pick up on, but I think it's been mentioned already. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. So, how about how does the pre-modern and modern dualities affect how we define modern heritage of Africa? Albino Jopala?
Thanks, Cedric. I was just wondering on the point above, if urbanization, industrialism, I would agree. If one would not also just have technology, I mean, because anything else that will come, all other forms of expression and what it was achieved, I think it would cover huge ground, and then the principle of ruptures and continuity. I mean, one can then sort of like say the interpretation, but I do think that technology is just. I mean, it would be equal to one of those terms. The other one, which I'm also wondering in terms of the text that is there, is also, I mean, we're talking of those like complex forms of organization, a political organization. I mean, we're talking of like centralized states or any sort of like form, which it then comes to also highlights quite a distinct achievement, which I would also understand as to be some along the lines as urbanization and all of those social changes. Thank you.
Okay.
George, can I just be clear that you're suggesting another bullet point there, an additional one, not about political organization?
No, I was actually on the same point. So when you say modernity engages social changes, such as urbanization, which, oh, okay, so I see what you mean when you say social changes. I mean, technology is not it is on the, it would be the condition for social change, but it's not in itself a social change. I mean, I don't know, it's maybe another point would help.
Okay, I've noted it. We can debate it later. Mike.
Yeah, I can't find where the hand is, but I think that we just need a consistency, because we spoke about postmodern and modern, and this is exactly what we're questioning. So we really have to then work out some consistent way through that, how we relate to it. Are we relating it to try to understand a time frame, or are we speaking about some approach? But whatever it is, we will have to look at that and make it very much more consistent.
Okay, fantastic. Do we move on to heritage then? Heritage as priceless cannot be quantified and calculated. It is about everyday life. People are creating heritage every day, and there is need to consider contemporary heritage as part of modern heritage in Africa. We need to have a modern heritage that represents young Africans. It has to speak and represent contemporary Africa. A little bit of redundancy in there, but any comments? Yes, Laura.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit general, this. I mean, to say that heritage is about everyday life is very general. I don't think everything that we do in Africa every day could be classified as heritage. So I think possibly we could just sharpen this a little bit. I know where it comes from because I remember the discussion we had at our last open session. But it could be, I think we just need to think about how we refine it. I'm not going to make any suggestions now, but I just have that slight reservation. But I certainly agree with the modern African heritage representing young Africans and contemporary Africa.
Okay.
So it's just the first bit. Thanks.
Then our wordsmiths would play with that and sharpen it. Shahid. You are muted, Shahid.
Okay. I think there are two concepts in that point. One is that heritage is priceless and cannot be quantified and calculated. And the point was about that it was not property. So I think, because that's the point that Achille was making. Mm-hmm. Its price is quantifiable, it cannot be calculated, and it's not property. So I think we must separate that idea from the idea that where in the future we're thinking that it must represent also young people in Africa, or it must represent and speak to contemporary Africa. I think those are two different points. And I agree the point about the everyday. I mean,
okay, no, yeah. That makes sense. So just splitting that to have 3 points so that it becomes much more clearer in terms of capturing what we wanted to capture. That will also go a long way towards sharpening the thrust of the or the spirit of the phrasing. And also values and various aspects of heritage in Africa are contextual. What needs to be preserved is the meaning connected to values, and then heritage is defined by people for the people. So in this case, what do people value? Again, that could be sharpened a bit, but do we have any concerns regarding the thrust of the argument of the phrasing? Sorry. I don't see any hands. There are different trajectories of heritage in the past, present, and future. Heritage is based on transformation, innovation. So that idea of continuity, you know, and change, particularly the feedback processes between the past, present, and the future. I don't see any hands. Heritage is not only about built environments, but it is about tangible principles that contemporary societies can learn from. Any thoughts, suggestions? And there has been a general misconception, particularly by archaeologists, that heritage is about very old things or places. Unfortunately, you know, not everything is heritage, but anything can be heritage. Yeah, this is much more deeply philosophical. Any concerns?
So one general point, Shadrach, that's been raised by Jeff Cody is that we refer to modern heritage in Africa in this section quite a bit. Whereas we did make the point from the brainstorming session, and that's the title of our initiative, is Modern Heritage of Africa. So we need to be consistent there as well.
Okay. Makes lots of sense. Where were we? Okay, modern heritage of Africa against ontological and contractual senses, where relational might be the basis of an African and a new global sense of being, modern, and being in a new historical moment of modernity without slipping into the prejudicial nodes associated with colonialism and neoliberalism, where heritage is a property. One central idea of modernity is a mobility of people, ideas, and knowledge, and the institutional and governance limits to its spread. This presupposes an acknowledgement of knowledge, science, and technology. Any thoughts? Any views? Any reactions? With the European global trading companies existing alongside early African modernity, changing modes of exchange for goods, markets, and ideas appeared. The introduction of Christianity as the soft velvet glove, rupturing local beliefs and traditions. Where does Islam fit in this?
I was just going to
Shahid.
ask that question, Shadrach, as well. I think the spread of Islam was very similar in a way to in the sense that it did rupture traditions and beliefs in much the same way as Christianity did. So maybe we just include Islam as well.
Shahid, you are still muted.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I was going to make a point and now I've lost my thought. There's a huge, it depends on which Christianity we're talking about here. I think that was the point I was trying to make. There's a Christianity that predates colonial Christianity. And we need to make that distinction very clear.
Ethiopia.
Yeah, exactly.
And Eritrea.
So, I mean, you have Christianity coming down the Nile Valley into Africa, which is a very different Christianity from that which is introduced by colonialism.
Professor Oduku?
Well, I think the idea about soft velvet gloves should be taken out. I mean, that's the thing. The encounter was different. And as we've already said, there are various secular movements. It wasn't just Christianity. So I think that's a narrative of only a certain form of Christianity. So I would just say various religions, another thing, culture is it.
Okay. Thank you. Colonialism and dark modernity has been closely associated with industrial capitalism. Dark modernity, what does it refer to?
Is it negative forms of heritage? We need a different terminology there, I think.
Sorry to keep jumping in, chaps. I'm just trying to understand what we're really saying. Is this not more judgmental thing? I mean, it might be in line with what we're all believing, but is it the place to put it in a document like this, kind of unless we elaborate on it further?
Yeah, you are raising a very important point there, Laura. And one of the things that we need to keep in mind is to be realistic, as to accept that there is a limit to what can get into this kind of a document. So other things can go elsewhere, for example, in publications and so on. So what are the core things that we need to include in a document of this nature? I guess that is the purpose why we are going through these points. So things that are too judgmental, if we feel so, let us take them out so that we are left with things that will add more value based on the goals that we have for this specific manifesto or document, concept document on modern heritage of Africa. Shahid. Professor Vauda.
Sorry, I keep forgetting to unmute. So I'm going to put on my professorial hat. The one we have, and we've had this debate last week as well, as to how far we push this idea around modernity and its dark side. So I'm okay that we can talk about it elsewhere, but for me this is critical, because if we dilute this too much, then we might as well just fold the whole thing up. We've got all the UNESCO policy, we have recommendations, we have agreements, we have a whole range of recommendations that come out of conferences, all of which will take care of everything that we are doing. So somewhere we have to indicate that the problem with modernity defined from Europe is that it comes with certain negative consequences. And if we don't have that idea somewhere in there, we have a problem.
Agreed. It's just a question of finding the right expression that is much more clearer. So because in essence, and I do strongly agree with you, that we must also challenge ideas, we must challenge convention. Otherwise, what is the point of producing more of the same? But clarity of language also would help us towards arriving at that objective. Are you happy with that kind of position?
No, absolutely. I mean, one could say colonialism is associated with industrial capitalism, which has both positive and negative effects, including the rupturing of local beliefs and traditions, for example.
Okay, fantastic. And when writing, I think that's when we can also pay particular attention to this, so that these very rich nuances are not lost, and which can give the document a distinctly African appeal, but also applying to or resonating with the other places in the world, as Mohammed reminded us. Modern heritage is all about creating a new form of life, about the future where heritage is interpreted in African epistemological circles. This reinforces some of what you were talking about, Shahid, and the other points that were mentioned. Do we have any comments on this? The various typologies of heritage in Africa includes local and colonial architecture. Each can be defined as modern in their own terms. I don't see any hands. Nostalgia should be part of modern heritage. What is the difference between memory and nostalgia? Longing for the past, remembering the past.
I remember our discussion again about this. I'm not quite sure. Nostalgia to me implies sentimentality, and I don't know I mean, I'm open to lots of debate on this, but I don't know if that is necessarily part of what we want to stop. Are we sentimental about our recent contemporary heritage? Do we view it nostalgically? Some of it's not very nice at all, so we don't. I wouldn't imagine.
Okay, maybe for the reasons that it is thought-provoking, we might leave it for now. Okay, Nomusa?
I think I also remember this. I think it's not necessarily that nostalgia should be part of modern heritage, but that modern heritage is made complex and is entangled with or at least by nostalgia. So it's the things that people, it's the ideals that people create about their pasts, right? And pasts that we may not actually have experienced, that then of course make the landscape of modern heritage complex. So not necessarily that it should be part of it. It's just, it is a lens through which it's read, I think. Yeah, I mean, I could find a way to rewrite this.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Well articulated. I should come and attend your class, Professor. Olga?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, are we speaking about nostalgia really, or are we maybe thinking along the lines of memory? Because I think that we risk to go too much into idealization of the past.
Which is also part of heritage, one could argue. I'm just playing devil's advocate. Any other thoughts?
Yeah. Oh.
Shahid? Mike?
Yeah, I think that Jyoti had previously made a mention that we should sort of like use language which is generally accepted. And I think the word memory has been best used both within the World Heritage Convention and sister conventions. So I think that we could happily go with just simply memory, because that in itself memorizes a lot of other things which are taking place.
Okay, but the idea was that if we leave it as nostalgia, we know that it's memory. But when drafting, the ideas embedded within the concept of nostalgia could help us to perhaps sharpen the document and get some. So, for example, the connections that people establish with the past. The point that Olga made about, idealization and so on, but it is a way of relating to the past, and we do relate to the past or to the present and even to the future in that way.
One point I would raise about nostalgia from the former colonial perspective is the concern that might play into those that are nostalgic about colonialism, and that can happen both from the former colonized as well as the former colonizers. So that would need to be framed, I think, as a negative.
I think that this is perhaps we could just not put it on hold, but just say that's an interesting thing which we should then pick up then perhaps in the next workshop as well, because I think the memory also relates to the intangible heritage, which is a really critical part of it.
Okay. And there's also a comment. In North Africa, there is an architectural style called Arabisans, which was created load of the colonial period, and now in Tunisia in the name of this heritage. So French speakers, can you help with that, because that was a translation, or that is a translation from French. Is there anything that we need to discuss from that comment? I'm also informed that we need to increase at the pace, which is always the difficulty of moderating these kinds of things. That on the one hand, debate is fulfilling, it's nourishing, but then on the other, the time is limited. But nevertheless, the last point: what are the attributes that make modernity in Africa, innovation and management systems, architecture, language? We need to come up with time and attributes. What qualifies a heritage to be a modern heritage? Again, of Africa, not in Africa. Olga.
Yes, sorry to take us back to the what Hamida suggested, because as far as I understand her French, I'm thinking about the style. For example, something like there was in the colonial times. There was some kind of idealization of, for example, Egyptian architecture. So there were a lot of buildings that, let's say, created in the style that copied what ancient Egyptians created. So she's speaking about something similar in Tunisia, as far as I understand. So do we understand it as something created by the colonial powers using the styles created by Africans, or do we consider it as a new creation that can be considered modern heritage?
Okay, thank you so much, and that is a very valid point, which shows those connections between the past and the present. The past inspiring the present and the future, and what happens when time has passed. So, what are the attributes that make modernity in Africa, innovation and management systems? If we are happy with that point, then can we move on to point number 2? Hopefully here we will be much quicker. And also...
Frederick, sorry to interject. Sorry, it's been suggested that people might be more willing to have a discussion or dialogue if people turn their cameras on. I don't know if people feel comfortable with that, but I just want to say that if they do, feel free to turn your cameras on. It'd be nice to see everyone, but don't worry if you can't. Your bandwidth is short. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
Not a problem, not a problem. So, which is also good to see some other friends and enemies as well.
Who's your enemy there, Shadrach?
Don't mind me. So,
are you talking about me?
No, just making the conversation a little bit dynamic, you see.
Sure.
Mike, you want to say something? I hope it's not to say we are enemies.
Yeah, I think that I just wanted to say there's certain things like the attributes which came into the issue of the NARA document. So I think this is another subject which will have to be then, shall we say, debated at another point. So I think that's one thing which we could also look about. And this might also, hopefully that we will have a session sometime, whether it's next month, the month after, with the Getty looking at their new framework, and that might also provide a really good discussion, which will then help us to move into crafting then a text which will relate to that.
Okay, Shahid, I see your hand is up.
Oh, I wanted to take under cultural continuities and ruptures point 1 and 2 together and
fantastic, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, we're separating language from as if it is something that is a thing which out reference to everyday life, the cultural hybridities that we have constantly developing. And I just wondered that we need to think of while we think of European languages as being imposed, but these languages within Africa are also changing, and they are more hybridities suited to the way in which particular countries want to make reference to their heritage, rather than making a claim that we must, it's almost implied that we must do away with European languages as if they are now foreign. They might have been, but they are now being completely adapted. And so radio stations that I've heard in West Africa, which broadcast in Pidgin, for example, it's a kind of hybridity which needs to be recognized from where it originates and from where it is developed, rather than make too much of a divide, in which case those kinds of hybridities become excluded.
Okay. So any other points, or we move on to 3? Use of local materials and local innovation is very important within modern heritage aspects of continuity and perhaps discontinuity.
The only point I might raise here, Shadrach, is there's a degree of repetition or duplication across some of these points, and whether anyone has any strong views on that. It's inevitable, I suppose, when we've got so many, but do they, like, for example, materials was discussed in the previous section. Is it important to have them here or somewhere else, or is it okay to have cross-referencing across a document like this?
I think cross-referencing would be good. And also when it comes to the actual process of writing, then we can weed out any repetition. So now it is much better to start broad and then narrow it down to the specifics when people are writing, because it depends on what we think the size of this document should be. But yeah, as you rightly point out, some of these points there are too many, and they are repetitive and so on. But the key thing was, have we captured in broad terms what was discussed, and is the ideas encapsulated here, do we want to take them forward, sharpening them, even if this is also part of an archive, right? So even if we end up with a smaller document with a few set of points, in terms of looking at the evolution of this document, evolution of these ideas, we can track that through the different iterations. The need to go beyond 20th century built heritage and acknowledge traditional materials used in the construction of modern heritage in Africa. Yeah, that speaks to the repetition you were mentioning, Edward. Whose concept of time do we use? Western assumptions of temporality, chronology, and linear time were claimed to be universal. Mike?
Yeah, I was just sort of looking at local materials. I think that in one of the things that obviously that the NARA document looked at, I think that this will be something which we will have to expand on in the next stage. So therefore we get a better understanding of what this might mean. My second point really is sort of now seeing exactly what's happening, is that one of the things which is probably very important is Article 5 of the Convention, putting heritage in the life of the community. And I think that perhaps somewhere we might want to be able to pick up on that, because when we speak about then people being involved, and that the architecture of today is the heritage of tomorrow, then I think that the importance of understanding of heritage in the community, and then picking up what Laura spoke about and what ICOM do working with youth becomes absolutely critical.
Absolutely, absolutely. how do we capture the idea of ruptures in continuity? We should take a holistic approach in defining modern heritage and shy away from using a single aspect like time. And if we are to use time, which time calendar are we using? So that's again another point that is coming from earlier on. Are there any strong feelings, suggestions here? I don't see any hands. So
just one very minor. We're not rapturous. We're rupturing, I think.
Yes. Are you?
Sorry, guys. We might be rapturous about what we're doing, but we're rupturing modern the status quo.
Okay, fantastic. The song about being rapturous could be good, eh? Anyway, number 3. Interactions and interconnections between nature and culture, intangible and tangible elements. There is no tangible without intangible. There is need to relate the concept of modern to the tangible and lived experiences. We need a timeline that is inclusive of social relationship and meanings in heritage. Any thoughts? Jobs, do you want to say anything?
I think that this is if we look at, I just can't see it on the screen. What number is this? Just
3. So all the bullet points on 3.
Oh, that's those 3. Just it's just a little bit to the edge of my screen. But I think that looking at the detail, we might take a step back and look at the whole structure now. If we in fact we say, okay, that interactions to connections should be a major heading. So each of these headings then will have a text which will pick up on some of these parts. I personally think that we need to expand and take on something which really looks at this interaction to connection, because this is the power of where we are, not just in Africa, but in fact the message that we can give to the rest of the world.
Joking.
Yeah, hi. Sorry to intervene. I'm missing the nature part of this though. So I'm wondering if we could somehow strengthen, put a couple, either one more bullet point or 2 more bullet points to really look at the interconnections specifically with the natural heritage, because it's not just the intangible that's natural. I mean, it's actually natural heritage. I don't have a suggestion for wording, but I just want to flag it up, and maybe we can come up with some specific text to link it more to the natural heritage here.
Okay, makes sense. I'm sure the point has been captured. Professor Oduku.
And we recognize that Russell's on holiday today, and his contribution has been very critical.
Yeah, precisely. Maybe, Edward, we also ought to be on holiday, eh? But just to say that Professor Oduku said that she will be leaving at 4. So I would just like to express sincere gratitude. Thanks for all your interventions. And yes, we will share these documents. Let's engage with it as we go forward. Thank you so much for your contributions. Number 4.
Shadrach. Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, before number 4, on number 3,
mm-hmm.
I think one of the, in my view, critical point that was made in the discussion was the issue of if we depart from value, and if we are looking at Africa, we mentioned ideologies, epistemologies, and values. When I see point 3, the interactions and interconnections between nature, culture, tangible and intangible, I mean, that's one of the critical contributions from Africa when we basically point. And what I'm left wondering is that in other fields, let's say in archaeology, a key difference, one would argue, is that if one look at an archaeological site, let's say in a Western scientific conception, then one is looking at a specific set of values. However, for many non-Western communities now, what the interpretation of that very same site using a different epistemology, then it means a sacred space or a place of interaction with the ancestral spirits. So for me, I think it's a critical point, because if one has to redefine modern heritage based on non-Western conceptions, I think it's almost the same exercise to actually say, what does it mean to have that interconnection between nature and culture, tangible and intangible? Because we know now from doing the exercise with other types of heritage, what is actually the end, the ultimate result. So I think it's one of the points that maybe it needs a bit of, it can be used as a hook to actually put this idea quite across more clearly. Thank you.
Obrigado. So we are adding another bullet point, or the something to do with values between nature and culture, intangible and tangible elements, comma, then we put values and then we work on it later. Would you be comfortable with that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Perfect for me.
Fantastic. Which reminds me of that book, Your Monument, Our Shrine. And of course, that famous archaeological site in Mozambique. What do they call it? Chinyamapere. Point number 4, diversity of local and traditional knowledges and practices. Right? We need to redefine heritage using local language narratives. We need to value local before, or even if it never becomes part of the global. So we need to think about the local, and then we need to think about validation and recognition do not need to be external. So most use African concept of time. Maybe we will also need to unpack that concept of time. Is it secular? Is it how is it different to the more linear conceptions of time? If we had the more time, then we could engage in terms of the philosophy of time. When Yeats and so on talk of or Tennyson talk of seasons of mist and mellow fruitfulness, isn't that a secular understanding of time, even in a Western point of view? Any thoughts so far? Any comments? We need to extend the idea of modern heritage to a wider public. The youth were mentioned. Less value tends to be attributed to heritage of the recent past. As with African heritage, just look at the UNESCO list for proof. Does African liberation heritage fall into this category? Given that some African countries actually give it's recent and it has a more weight. Is that UNESCO Declaration 33C of, is it 2005? Talking of liberation heritage in Africa and so on. I'm just raising that point simply because it's not, there is some heritage of recent past which has a significance. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I think that we spoke about interconnections, and therefore I think that these other conventions are really critical. But looking at this, I think there might be room for somewhere to put in awareness, dissemination, intergenerational understanding. If in fact we want recognition of it, the recognition must come from on the street. And if we can't get the recognition on the street, it's not something which is then part and parcel of some esoteric group of experts. So I think that, I don't know where this might come in, but I do think that it'll also link into the AWHF and ICROM program as well. And I think that this would be something which would be very good.
Laura, thanks for that, Mike.
And thanks. Just very quickly, because unfortunately I have to leave at 5. I think the point, Shadrach, that you raised about the resistance and liberation routes and sites in Africa is really important, because that is definitely part of what would be considered, I think, modern heritage of Africa. So yeah, I think it's. I just picked up on what you were saying. I think that's an important aspect of what we're working with as well.
Thank you so much. Talking of African concepts, and Joe, I see in the chat there is talk of cultural landscapes. And sorry for this academic type of question, but if there is no division between nature and culture, then what does cultural landscape mean? A landscape is a landscape. What would you say if I were to argue like that?
Well, okay, fair enough. And maybe we just call them landscapes then, instead of cultural landscapes. That would be okay. That would actually be okay with me. I mean, it's a cultural landscape. You know, I've had people argue to me that the entire world is a cultural landscape, because it is an interrelationship between man and nature, and I think that's actually true. But we can use landscape. I would be totally okay with that.
No, I was just trying to be a troublemaker, but thanks for that.
I like it when you try to be a troublemaker. It's okay. It raises good questions.
There is need to recognize oral evidence and texts when we mention African heritage, since they are a great part of heritage. Any comments, responses?
Would this be relevant also to the intangible as well? Perhaps there's room to perhaps, obviously all these bullet points, we're going to have to try to edit them and reduce them, put them together. But I think that this would be more powerful, adding to, therefore, the intangible.
Thank you, Mr. Variso. Do you have anything to share with us? I miss your voice. That's why I'm picking on you. I know that your hand is not up, so forgive me for that. Mr. Swaibo Variso.
No, thank you, Professor. I just hear my voice, then I wake up. I was working on something else, but I'm following. I think
okay. No. Do you have anything that you want from the AWHF point of view? Do you have anything that you want to say this far?
Let me put it full screen. No, I think I agree with the idea that landscape may say, if we are talking from if I can say the presumption that nature and culture are together, maybe culture is not something we need to emphasize here.
Thank you for that, and apologies for picking on you. I won't do it again.
Yes,
I promise.
because I'm a bit lost. Let me come into the meeting and then be really 100% in.
No problem. If we don't have any issues on 4.
I just like to recall Russell's very important point that the national parks are a cultural construct. And I think that this is really an interesting part. I think in addition to other aspects of nature that he spoke about and how that this integration is an essential part of modern heritage, but this came from IUCN representative.
Yeah, except, let me not be an academic today for the purposes of progress. Because I was going to say that also reifies that division between nature and culture, where these animals, which are part of African cosmologies, part of culture, are enclosed somewhere in a park called the Kruger. So this artificial colonial type of, thinking, which is at variance with African knowledge systems and African thinking. But I leave it at that. Point number 5, durability and sustainability. We need to apply innovation, stardom, universality, comfort, etc., as conditional for modernity. Even me, I'm not clear what this point is trying to say. Anyone who can help us?
Robert or Badoni, where did this one come from?
Is it just no, particularly the stardom and stuff like that? Yes, Shahid.
I don't know about the stardom part, but I know about that innovation was emphasized since at least August last year as something that is universal. And I'm assuming that is one of the conditions for modernity. Yeah. So innovation is not. Yeah.
That needs to be rephrased then, and we take out the stardom to make sure that that makes sense.
Yeah.
There is need to develop methods for identifying and documenting these heritage categories, something which ICROM has been doing quite a lot, Africa 2009.
And this will be for this will be a subject which we could then develop then at our next one of our next sessions. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say yes. ICOMOS has also been working on that, and yeah, the Getty and the 20th century for ICOMOS, the 20th Century Committee has been working on this a lot also.
I wouldn't put this under durability and sustainability, perhaps.
Where would you put it?
Maybe definitions, maybe heritage, or actually I can't remember what the topics are.
Yeah. I think that once we've gone through the list, we'll be able to then go back to those 7 headings and then we see whether they are still relevant.
Okay, and we have round about 30 minutes to finish off the 2 points, and see, we need to look at other forms of life, both past and present, to see whether they are principles of sustainability that we can inherit, whether they are or whether they are. What does non-Western heritage or African heritage teach us about the principle of sustainability? In terms of materials, in terms of, almost everything, landscape management, those ditches in earthworks in Nigeria and the like, Ife, Benin City, and so on. Are the civilizations built by Europe, India, and China sustaining the world currently, or we need to look into other areas such as African past to find new principles of sustainability? There's also the question of scale. I don't know where the issue of scale will fit in, because when you have high populations, the rate of extraction of resources becomes also high. So how do you balance that? But again, that's more an academic question, and certainly there is a need to learn from the past, and the architects do it all the time anyway, drawing principles and inspiration from the Egyptian pyramids, Great Zimbabwe, and other places, and coming up with some very nice designs. So we can broaden up and include that. There is need for humanity to walk a new path in companionship with environment and planet. Heritage is about durability and sustainability. Any questions on number 5?
Yeah, Professor, may I have a question? What is the difference between durability and sustainability?
Durability and sustainability. What is the difference, folks? Is it durability? Yes, it talks about duration. We are talking of time, and so durability has elements of resilience, the ability to perhaps survive over the long term, and perhaps he has elements of some retrospective elements that you are looking over a time, particularly how long, how durable are the pyramids of Egypt, right? And then you are also talking of sustainability going into the future. So sustainability tends to be a futuristic, because you are thinking of what is to come. Although I do agree that there is a relationship between the terms, because if something is durable, then it can also be sustained into the future. That would be a thumbsuck kind of distinction from me. I don't know if other colleagues want to come in. Shahid.
I can only say that we need to debate this because concrete can be durable, but it's not sustainable in the long run.
We should ask Susan about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I think this question of durability and sustainability is one that has been a real challenge for the heritage of modernity, because of, you know, in many places where you're talking about new technological approaches and materials, they haven't always proved to be durable. And then therefore, as there's been a difficulty with physically sustaining them. And so there's also been issues related to the whole, you know, energy use and things. And perhaps that's one of the learnings that comes out of the heritage of modernity of Africa, because of different approaches to sustainability and climate in the first place. So, I mean, I always think of that, and I don't know if the concepts that are in here go much broadly than that, but this question of durability and sustainability has certainly been, you know, a great topic of conversation around modern heritage for a long time. So how does that apply specifically to Africa? Is I'm presuming that's what some of the parts of this we're trying to get to. Is that right?
Yeah.
Thanks for that. How is Los Angeles? I miss the Hotel Angelino, just below you guys at the...
I don't know. I haven't been near it for a year, so...
Okay. Mr. Variso, has your question been addressed? It's a question is subject to further debate, further engagement, but are you happy with the responses that have been proffered so far?
Very much, President. Thank you.
Okay. Pressures of urbanization and the threats to heritage. So we can think of the UCT fire disaster reveals the problems of modern heritage and the challenge to its identification and documentation. Perhaps the lack of socio-economic power is affecting heritage in Africa. For example, the case of District 6 in South Africa. And then there is the question of reparations. At least some clarity would be needed there. And what is the reparations are speaking to? And then the ecological crisis affecting humanity and creating a crisis of its own, e.g. People are being evacuated from the Congo forest to save the forest. So recalling H. Nelson's paper, Protected Areas Saving Africa from Africans. Any responses to pressures of urbanization and thoughts to heritage. Any comments, any thoughts?
So on the ecological crisis side, just that one, I think the problem is just bad management. It's not the ecological crisis that is driving people out. It's bad management of managers saying that people can't coexist with their natural environment, and it goes against everything. I would say everything that we believe. So I think that needs. Sorry, no, it just needs to be developed more. I think it's and that's also a problem. And dare I say it, that's also not a problem just with natural heritage. I mean, there was a period of time when they were talking about kicking all of the people living in Axum out of the old town of Axum, for example. But 25 years ago, they didn't do it, but they were talking about doing it because to save the heritage, they needed to get rid of the people. And of course, that's insane. So.
Yeah, I'd just like to add another point on that one. I mean, we saw that in Harar, that just two seasons of drought brought in hundreds of thousands of people from the villages into the edge of Harar. This is another facet of the urbanization, which is related to climate change, to other aspects, which needs to be actually also identified. But again, the question really is how is this affecting modern heritage? This is what we have to do. This is not yet another document, but it's a document relating to modern heritage, and therefore we should then actually begin to then ask the questions at each one. So what?
Mohammed, do you have anything to add?
Well, so far no, but I fully agree with what Joe and Mike said. I mean, our issue is not really to look at those conflict per se or issues, but how do they relate with the modern heritage? Yeah, in fact, I mean, if you look at careful today is what is happening with historical cities. We also have the same kind of trend. You know, before it was maybe management authority was kind of taking out. Today we have another force of economy, and they are also doing the same kind of thing. So, but I fully agree with Joe that the idea of ecology was not ecology itself. Just our understanding of management system was quite problematic.
Merci beaucoup. Shahid, I saw your hand up.
No, I'm okay. I mean, the points have been made already quite effectively by Mohammed and others.
Shadrach, if we already identified one of the things that we said earlier on in the document was that urbanization was maybe also one of the things that we considered as a as part of the modern of becoming modern in a way, urbanization. So again, maybe here the issue is not so much the pressures of urbanization, but it's the management. It's the management of urbanization and its consequences. Okay. Is maybe the best way to express this.
I'm sure Edward is capturing that. Then a counter question then would be, how about the rural areas?
Yeah, I think
where development, infrastructure, and all these things are expanding. Is it not a threat to heritage? Or I haven't seen any emphasis on the rural in the document per se. Does the rural matter? That could be a question that could emerge from what you are asking.
I think there's two things. Is that one is that that we look at Goal 11 of the Sustainable Development Goals. It doesn't say cities; it says settlements. So we don't care about the actual size. It should be much more inclusive. The other one is about urbanization. Again, we're talking about a Cape Town document of modern heritage. Do we put urbanization as a problem, or as an issue, or as the value itself? And I think this is, in other words, urbanization has created an enormous amount of heritage assets on one hand. On the other hand, it becomes a threat to other aspects. So it's a double-edged sword, and we should then give some thought about how we are addressing it.
Yeah, the contradictions, which in this case and also in other cases, we need to think about how do we deal with, how do we counterpoise these seemingly contradictory are concepts? Shahid has the magic answer.
I wish I did.
No, I see your hand.
Yeah, no, but I was. I think when we talk about urbanization, we need to also contextualize the urbanization is that it's coming from somewhere, that people are coming from somewhere. There's a connection between the urban and the rural, and at least in my own experience, people who are in the urban go back to the rural. Maybe not all of them, but certainly that link is there. And secondly, because urbanization tends to create a greater sense of heritage within within whatever is defined as the urban boundaries. I mean, everything in it is not necessarily heritage that has to be durable and sustainable forever and ever. It goes back to an earlier idea that we had that heritage changes, and so we might want to think about how that then fits in when we're dealing with an ecological crisis. I have no answer to this. I'm just putting it out.
Fantastic. No problem. Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. Olga?
Yeah, just thinking about when we speak about modern heritage, do we consider also the fact that it's sometimes created or produced on top of or through the erasure of the previous heritage? So if you think about, for example, the landscape of Johannesburg and the mines, how, if we consider it as modern heritage, it was basically created, through blood and tears of Africans, and by destroying some parts of their lifestyles, right? Disrupting their lifestyles. You mentioned landscapes, how national parks, how they were created, right? So by destroying something, we're creating something that we will now call, modern heritage. So this I'm not sure if we should call it contradiction, but pain that is linked to the memory of this heritage.
And the layering as well would also go with that. Shahid, and then we go to Eritrea.
Olga's point is absolutely central to how we understand modern heritage in Africa. We need to take that point on board very, very seriously. Thank you.
Let's go to Eritrea again. You are still muted, my friend.
Okay, is it now? Okay. I agree with Professor Mike and Joe suggestion, but regarding to urbanizations, not only as a threat, but also it is contributing also a solution. Sometimes the historic city, it has a pressure of development. Sometimes within the city, if there is an urbanization, it can support the historic town or historic city. So I think we have to look at it, urbanizations and the heritage, a complementary elements rather than a threat. So an issue would be a policy, how to balance heritage and urbanization. So a key issue is the city urban management is a fundamental issue, how to balance the urbanization and conservation of the historic town. So that's my suggestion is a matter of policy which can balance the heritage conservation as well as how to develop the urbanization. This is an issue also we have to consider. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am also looking at the clock.
Shadrach, I have a point.
Sorry?
I just want to add something.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Of course, I second what Mike Chana say. There's also advantage when it comes to urbanization. So, and what Shahid say about urban-rural linkages, that's extremely important for Africa. And what Olga say, I try to understand it, but I will not say that all the time, we do destruction. We are talking about innovation. So sometimes, we innovate something and it come to modernity, if I can call that. So I'm really, I don't know, I'm hesitating this idea of saying whatever we have a modern heritage that we have destruct something. I don't think that's the situation. I mean, sometimes we innovate and we do that. So I don't know how we're going to put that.
Innovation is about distraction. You see those nice high-rise buildings and the environmental scars which they cause is something else.
But that is not an example of modernity. There's an example of modernity which are very good.
I was going to say it's not a good example of innovation either.
Exactly. Yeah.
In fact, it's a pretty bad example of innovation.
Okay, I understand. I mean, it has something to do with the idea of, progress as something that is, that could be retrogressive, but philosophical arguments for another day. Point number 7, cooperation, dissemination, and capacity building. Based on the NARA document, what are the time and attributes that make modernity in Africa? Oh, innovation and management systems. So innovation is coming again. There is need to be inclusive by considering various interdisciplinary developed frameworks that can assist in defining heritage typology and the range we have, including philosophy, literature, linguistics, archaeology, architecture, etc. Maybe indigenous knowledge systems, they could also fit in there. There is need for a full study and gap analysis of modern heritage as a heritage category. The Getty is going to help us with that. Thanks to all the colleagues. This will help as leverage to achieve the UN 20 sustainable development goals. African institutions must work closely with organizations such as the Getty and promote modern heritage. We are doing that. We can talk of Dokomomo and everyone who is in here, though I doubt that we need to have these specifically in this AAS points, because we already have that in the preamble. How does modern heritage of Africa help locals to achieve their dreams? How do we reference the UN Sustainable Development Goals in light of modern heritage of Africa? We need to have a modern African heritage representation that represents young Africans. It has to speak and represent contemporary Africa. Alisa K. Berry, I remember you making this point. There is need to discuss the harmonization and facilitation process of the World Heritage List and revise the tentative list. How do we mobilize people, resources, and there's a word missing here, and maybe those who can contribute to this conceptualization of modern heritage of Africa from nation states and corporations like maybe Amazon, Alibaba. There is need to enhance World Heritage Commission in Africa and its relationship with this needs some panel beating. But I also don't see communities and modern heritage of Africa anyway in terms of cooperation, because those would be also valuable allies. Time for responses, Mike Turner.
Yeah, thank you. That's first of all to Afo. Yes, thank you very much. That was the document I mentioned, because Dawson was the one who actually was a key person in that in the Great Zimbabwe meeting. I think that this subject, a lot of the bullet points here, I think belong somewhere else, and I think that we're going to send this back to Robert and Bodoni to do a little bit more homework on this one. And I believe that one of the next month's discussions must relate to community and dissemination. I think this is going to be critical, and I hope that we'll be able to have one of them which will actually look at this part of it.
Joe?
Yeah, let me 100% agree with that, with your comment and Mike's follow-up, that I think that community absolutely needs to be somewhere in this document, and it needs to be a strong piece of this document. So I'm not sure whether this is the best, I'm not sure whether this number is the best number for it, or whether it could go in another area, but I would certainly really want to highlight that as a point. The second thing I just wanted to say, just as a selfish point, because this chapter is on cooperation, dissemination, and capacity building, I think it would be really nice for ECROM if somehow or another ECROM appeared in here. And now I know that part of the thing about the youth in Africa is a place maybe that it might be possible for ECROM to appear, but I would also say more in general, I think it would be good to have something which expresses that institutions like ECROM and others that do capacity building for cultural heritage take better account of the modern heritage of Africa in all of their programs, not just the youth heritage, the youth Africa Youth Heritage Program, but more generally. So if we could sort of work that in at some point before we finalize this document.
If I have the chutzpah to tell you that, Joe, that perhaps you could join our Robert and Bedoni to actually give some text which we could actually use that, because you're absolutely right.
Thank you. Rim, do you have anything to add about the youth and cooperation?
No, I didn't raise my hand.
I know. But I'm just you once worked on the youth and the heritage program. So that's why I'm picking on you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, maybe more youth involvement, more capacity building for communities and youth and women.
Okay, fantastic. Now. So that's why I picked on you. You know, women. We have not mentioned.
Yes.
We did not emphasize that. You see.
Absolutely. Gender is definitely an issue.
Do you want to say something? Sorry for picking on you. I'm just looking at the names that are appearing here. Alisa K. Berry, do you want to say anything about cooperation, dissemination, capacity building? I know you were involved with those discussions on youth heritage in Africa. Anything you want to share here?
Thanks, Shadrach. I don't have anything to say for this part, but maybe for the first part. So maybe I'll come back to it later.
You can say it now. The floor is yours.
Okay. So no, I was just thinking while you were going through the first part, that if we're talking about modern heritage of Africa instead of modern heritage in Africa, does it mean that we could also consider heritage that is outside of the boundaries of Africa, like in the diaspora, for example? I'm thinking about intangible heritage like music or practices that come from Africa but are not within the African boundaries right now. You know, in the first part on identify and meeting, yeah, you gave a definition of modern definition of heritage. And what about Africa? What is Africa? Is it just the African continent, or is it Africa, the African continent and its diaspora? So yeah, it's just a thought I was thinking and thought it could be interesting to share. I don't know if it's relevant enough.
It is relevant enough, and it also speaks to the idea that Mohammed was talking about in terms of making this to be broad. So, as you know, the African connections between, you know, Brazil and Central Africa, Brazil and West Africa, and the other parts in North Africa, and the shared cultural practices. And it can also go the same way Shahid has been involved with this wonderful project, recentering Afro-Asian relations. There are also cultural exchanges that are taking place. We can talk of the connections across the Sahara, the trans-Atlantic, trans-Saharan exchanges. So that also has to feed into these processes, and that is a great point. Mike?
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on the point which Lisa had made, and I think that beyond the boundaries, I think when I think about whole, the biggest change in our minds is beyond the word beyond. And I think that while that we're not looking at the intangible within itself, I think that what we are looking at is then how a lot of these ideas have gone beyond into a diaspora, and how they in fact are affecting in a global, perhaps even a syncretistic ways. So I think that this is something which would have to be looked at over the next, while we're looking at the wider effects. And I think that this is very important, because the whole idea is to be able to say, yes, from Africa, there's something new all the time.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Sorry, can we just, one last thing is that before we go, I really would like that we all go and look at those 7 headings again and just see whether in fact the 7 headings are yeah, there it is.
That's fine.
Just
one last thing before we get to that. Job said that we could take 5 minutes of his time, so we are doing good. Dr. Thomas Tondlana, you are writing, there's something that you wrote on the chat in terms of universities, and I understand your university has one of the UNESCO chairs, which is a point that Mohammed emphasized earlier on, that these UNESCO chairs should also be playing an important role. Do you have anything to speak to that?
Thank you very much, Prof. No, I was just posing it as a question under heading 7, cooperation, dissemination, and capacity building, that, well, in as much as we have talked about communities and the youth and so forth, I think institutions of higher learning in Africa have got a role to play in capacity building when it comes to modern heritage, the modern heritage of Africa. So we also need to sort of incorporate these concepts in our curriculum as we are teaching.
Okay, fantastic. And I also hope that the UNESCO chairs will also be happy to take on to host some discussion seminars and so on. But that's an issue for engagement after this. These headings, do we need them after everything that we have discussed? Do we think we need them? What do we need to exclude? What do we need to add? Do we use them as working headings to be amended, improved as we go along? What is the general feeling in the House? Mike, is that a raised hand or?
Yes, no, yeah, it's a raise a hand, I think so. Shahid had mentioned that perhaps we should think about merging 1 and 2. I'm not too sure what the heading would be, whatever Shahid would come up with on that one. Whether in fact 3 is powerful enough. Joe mentioned the issue of the importance of
Sorry.
Am I the only one who has lost you, Mike?
No, we got as far as the importance of.
Mike, you're frozen. Mike. Who else has a point? Who else wants to make okay. You are back now.
Yeah, my internet is unstable. What's happening here in Jerusalem is terrible. But so the 1 and 2 perhaps to link together. The question whether in fact 3 is so much as a main strength. Whether we want the word durability and sustainability, or we just using it, is that an important part for the modern heritage for us to be able to address? And I think that otherwise, I think that I don't know whether it's the pressures of urbanization. It's purely it might be just urbanization because they're precious, but it's also part of the heritage. So I don't know exactly whether in fact we would like to reorganize that based on what we've talked about. And I think that cooperation, dissemination, capacity building will need to be worked on again, and it's going to be an important part.
Linked to that is the point that Mohammed made last week, which was that do we have any principles? Because these are headings, but do we have any principles? Because cultural continuities and ruptures can be an idea that underwrites the whole document. That in drafting we realize that there is continuity and ruptures and so on. Can we come, is it possible to come up with principles, or for now, for reasons to do with time, we keep these headings to guide us, but knowing that going forward, we would need to come up with a clearly defined principles. Edward, I see your hand.
I was just going to say that Olga's put in the chat the question of whether we need headings at all. I think it's a reasonable question to discuss briefly now, because there is a lot of obviously interconnection between them, and maybe that causes more confusion than clarity.
I would just say that the NARA document did have like 3 headings. Venice Charter, it is useful, but we might use it and then throw them away, as both Shadrach and Edward have said. But I think that the most important part is that if we look at the NARA document, it came up with principles, and it wasn't sort of like a document which says, okay, well, let's vote and do the following things. So I think this is probably a major message that we might want to give to the drafting group for the next stage.
Okay, Shahid.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think headings are useful to think with rather than to make them something solid and unchangeable. I mean, for me, it would be, when I'm looking at this and having had the benefit of all these discussions, I would talk about, as a principle, would be one of interactions, flows, and interconnections, because that's what we've been talking about a lot of. I mean, thematically, that's what we've been talking about. That the interaction between nature and culture, tangible and intangible, would be one aspect of that, but included would be that, you know, rural urbanization, mobility. What are the continuities and ruptures when we talk about interactions and interconnections? How do we speak about cooperation when people are moving, or when they are in villages, or when they are in towns? So that would be a different way of looking at it. And going from that to understanding diversity, I have a problem with the word traditional, but that's just me. You can only understand the word traditional if you can talk about something that's not traditional. And the problem is that who defines what is traditional? So all these issues can only come out, I think, if we have interactions and interconnections, then have continuities and ruptures, then cooperation, and then we can come to the question of diversity of local, because there's a lot of things about that have been mentioned about the local and the traditional, which are repeated in all of the headings, and we need to take account of the variety of the meanings used in each of those under the different current headings, or their nuances, because sometimes local is identified as a place, and sometimes local could mean, I mean, if I'm here in the center of Cape Town, I live in Sea Point, for me that's the local village, Sea Point. But it's local could also mean Cape Town in a larger context. So I just think we need to begin to make sense of these under new sorts of headings, that, or the thematic headings that have come out of the discussions from last week and this week.
So that then becomes a very important consideration for the drafting group. So when they reconvene, I'm sure they will do some further work on the document and then share with all of us. And as was said, we will have multiple opportunities to engage with the document at the forthcoming engagements, the events organized by the Getty, by also some of the heritage hubs in Africa, and maybe Dr. Tondlana might want to have one with the UNESCO chair. Do we have any burning question, last kind of remarks before I give the floor to Dr. Albino Jopela to tell us about the way forward and as we head towards a close? Mike.
No, just to thank, I thought this was a brilliant way of actually doing it, but to go through, to draft something would have been crazy. This has been far more productive, and thank you everybody for the discussion. I think that the drafting group is going to have now a lot of work to do, and thanks to our two rapporteurs, student rapporteurs, Robert and Bedoni here, and for Susan and Chandler and Jeff Cody for being here, not even in their pajamas. Well done.
Okay, thanks so much. And just to echo the thanks that Mike has offered, and also to thank everyone, but this is not the close. Dr. Albino Jopela, what is the way forward? Would you mind sharing with us? Over to you.
Thank you, Shadrach. Thank you, colleagues, for this very productive discussion, and as Mike has said, very fruitful. Indeed, a smaller group wouldn't actually have achieved so much. So we really appreciate. My role is just to set a reminder of what we see as being the way forward. If you recall our initial brainstorming, the idea was that the conceptualization workshop would be basically that one exercise where we'll be able to come out with a concept. As our thinking has also evolved, we then decided that, well, in order to reach September at Cape Town and have a Cape Town document, the reflection will also have to start at this time. So I think remarkable progress has been achieved. However, as we would all realize, we have not finalized the conceptualization exercise. And as we have agreed before, the conceptualization would be the basis for us to also engage and come up with a thematic framework that will then allow us to then move forward into the identification of what are the gaps, what are the critical cases, and what are the priorities that we have to look in terms of conservation, management, promotion, and also listing at a later stage. So what we then have in mind is that we'll now continue with the reflection on the development of the Cape Town document, but also trying to conclude this exercise on the finding an operational or a working concept of what constitutes modern heritage of Africa, which elements have been dissected and clearly articulated by many of you over the discussions. So as we then, with this exercise, we close at least the component on the conceptualization. And again, our deepest gratitude to University of Cape Town and colleagues for their remarkable work in terms of putting together this exercise. So what we look then forward is to now also move to the engagement on the thematic framework by looking and engaging on some of the other contributions from other institutions who are looking at the different, the issue of modern heritage from different angles. And here specifically, we have been discussing with the Getty Conservation Institute, and we're very pleased to have Susan and colleagues from the Getty here with us, where we're now finalizing the arrangements for a joint workshop on the thematic framework, looking into the one that was developed and proposed by the Getty for the 20th century modern heritage. Going forward, we will also continue the reflection, or at least the refining the Cape Town document through regional meetings, which is only possible thanks to the funding from UCL and University of Cape Town, which will then provide a platform for regional discussions, looking into the different areas in Africa and how those concepts can be refined, and how the content of the concept document, of the Cape Town document, I mean, can also be finalized. So that will be June and July. And then we know that part of this will be an important exercise building towards the symposium at University of Cape Town, where we then expect not only to have the Cape Town document in an advanced stage, to also be further refined, but also most of the reflections that we, some of them, we heard not only from our distinguished speakers and fellow colleagues, but also all those other issues that indeed they need, they still require a more intellectual discussion through the papers that the participants will be able to contribute, and the proceedings that will be able to publish. And here again, our deepest gratitude to Shahid, Thomas, and colleagues at UCT working on the preparation of this conference. Moving forward, then the conference and the material, we hope will also provide the backbone for an activity that will be spearheaded by the World Heritage Center on harmonization in October. And here by harmonization, we're looking more into the processes, onto how then one look into having the tools on the concept, having the tools on starting to look at the thematic framework. How does one then look into developing a working framework that allow us to then move further with identification of the sites and spaces that constitute indeed modern heritage of Africa, but above all, that allow us to expand our understanding and the scope of the interpretation of the modern heritage as it is understood today, and its inclusion and application through the lens of the World Heritage Convention. So that those will be the milestone in terms of activities, which will also be building blocks for what we then foresee to develop next year, as we will then be looking into developing a gaps thematic study. But for now, those will be, in my view, what we would like to highlight as the way forward. And just to conclude, In June, I would like also to to highlight June, July, I would say, that apart from the regional meetings that we'll have, we would have to also take note that we'll have the World Heritage Committee meeting, and is an occasion also to think on how would we raise awareness about the program, gather partners, but also make colleagues and institutions and potential partners aware of the movement that we have recently initiated. Those will be the brief remarks from AWHF in terms of the way forward. And we would, as always with the team that helps coordinate, very much welcome to have your inputs, and also if any specific offering for having a specific event or a specific activity that will help, that will contribute to this exercise, those are also very much welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jobs. And ICROM has been and is one of our partners, and they have been playing a very important role in terms of heritage conservation and management in Africa and elsewhere. And through their Africa program, they are sponsoring those hubs, which will be developed across Africa. So I call upon Mr. Joseph King to give us the closing remarks from the point of view of ICROM. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Shadrach. First, I would like to bring greetings from my Director General, Dr. Weber Ndoro, who I think many of you know, who very much wanted to be here at this meeting, but unfortunately we have institutional meetings this week, and he's involved in the final preparations for those meetings in the coming days. I also actually speak on behalf of my two sister advisory bodies to the World Heritage Convention, ICOMOS and IUCN, with whom we have a strong working relationship at ICROM, and I certainly hope that that has been in evidence in the various meetings that we've had on this initiative on modern heritage in Africa. The importance of this meeting and the continued development of our understanding of the modern heritage of Africa cannot be underestimated. People have a tendency when they think of Africa, people outside the region, to immediately turn to traditional architecture and archaeology. But this region, in fact, has a very strong modern heritage, and that heritage must be defined and it must be understood on its own terms. And that is why this effort that we are going through now is so important. The deliberations that we have been making today and the work that will be coming in the future will be very important for our better understanding of the concept of what is the modern heritage of Africa. But I think we cannot lose sight of our goal, which is not just understanding the concepts of modern heritage in the region, but also that we need to work on the better recognition of this important heritage. Such recognition will certainly help us to have a better representation from the region on the UNESCO World Heritage List, which, as we all know, is, I would say, somewhat less than representative of all of the regions of the world. But I think this effort is one of the things, hopefully, that will help us to get a better representation on the World Heritage List of all regions of the world. But even beyond the World Heritage List, I think this effort is important in redefining these important places and their attributes, so the important modern heritage and their attributes, as a way that would be useful not just for Africa, but for other regions of the world. Even more importantly, I would say that hopefully, and I think this is really the ultimate goal that we have, is that hopefully this should be leading to a better conservation and a better safeguarding of this heritage. I think we can't lose sight that this is our final goal, that we need to have the ability to safeguard this heritage, the modern heritage of Africa, and make sure that we can pass that down to the next generation of Africans, and honestly to the whole world. So I think that's really the work that we're trying to carry out. I think we as ECROM, and I guess on behalf of the advisory bodies, I think we look forward to the continued development of this Cape Town document and the upcoming symposium that we'll be having, well, in Cape Town or hybrid at least, and also the further development of this Modern Heritage in Africa initiative over the longer period of time. To conclude, I would like to thank the partners in this work. Already mentioned the Getty Conservation Institute and their contribution in the future, University College London, particularly the Bartlett School. As I mentioned, my sister advisory bodies, ICOMOS and IUCN, and the UNESCO World Heritage Center. But in particular, I would like to actually thank the Africa World Heritage Fund, which is becoming a more and more important partner for ECROM in many of its activities over time. And I think they've grabbed onto this idea, and I think we thank them very much for their cooperation in this and for their thought in carrying this initiative forward. But I would also like to give a special mention to the University of Cape Town, to our moderator or our chair for the day, Shadrach, but all of his colleagues at the University of Cape Town. We all know that the University of Cape Town has just been hit with this terrible fire, and I do want to highlight that despite this tragedy, the staff of the University of Cape Town has been working full on in the implementation of the 2 meetings that we've had over the last 2 weeks. And I think we would really like to express our gratitude to everyone that has been involved for their dedication to this important work, even in the face of this very difficult tragedy that you all have been living over this last couple of weeks. So finally, just to conclude, again, I would like to say that ECROM, and I'm here not just myself, but I'm here also with my colleague Esper Donavosi and my Director General Weber Ndoro. We all look forward to the follow-up steps in regard to modern heritage in Africa. We look forward to the symposium or conference coming up from the University of Cape Town and the further activities that are going to be taking place this year and also, I believe, into next year. We think that this effort is long overdue. We're happy that we're moving forward on it, and we look forward to our continued involvement in this work as it goes forward. So again, let me thank all of the participants in today's meetings. This has really actually been a fantastic and fascinating discussion, and I look forward also personally to how this continues to develop over time. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those heartwarming words, Joe. And now, last but not least, we have heard Job saying that from the point of view of the AWHF, and some might know that there is Mr. Swaibu Variso, who happens to be the executive director of the African World Heritage Fund, which is the organization that is also partly responsible for bringing us together. But Mr. Variso and his team, including Jobs, they are supported by the AWHF board. And without the support of the AWHF board, we would not have made the success and the gains that we have made thus far. So to give us the concluding remarks is one of the board members for the African World Heritage Fund, who was with us from the baby steps. They also attended the brainstorming session. And last week, they were also with us. Today, they were with us and making some very important interventions. So colleagues, allow me to then give the floor to Dr. Hamida Aroma to give the closing remarks on behalf of the African World Heritage Fund. Over to you, Hamida.
Thank you very much. I can't. Merci beaucoup. Je n'arrive pas à activer ma caméra, s'il vous plaît. OK. OK. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, mesdames et messieurs. À l'issue de ces échanges intenses portant sur un aspect important de notre patrimoine commun, il me revient, au nom du conseil d'administration du Fonds pour le patrimoine mondial africain, de vous remercier très chaleureusement pour votre engagement. Les différentes communications et interventions ayant meublé notre programme la semaine dernière et aujourd'hui traduisent le caractère extrêmement sérieux de notre détermination à contribuer qualitativement à ce que nous pouvons définir comme patrimoine moderne dans une perspective d'interrogation et de mise en cause compte tenu des certitudes erronées. Le document du CAP sur le patrimoine moderne est un moment clé sur notre parcours commun. Je suis consciente des divergences de vues, mais il est également essentiel d'élaborer un cadre de référence qui reflète nos idées, notamment celles qui convergent. La perspective d'obtenir un document final en septembre requiert que les experts impliqués restent en contact et continuent d'interagir de façon fructueuse. Cependant, au-delà du document de CAP sur le patrimoine moderne, je pense qu'il est important de consolider le cadre conceptuel qui permettra à l'Afrique et au reste du monde de contribuer à la stratégie globale pour une liste du patrimoine mondial équilibrée, crédible et représentative. C'est-à-dire que le patrimoine moderne en Afrique devra aller au-delà des momentalismes et des clichés consacrés par le colonialisme. Il devra être nourri par le souci de diversification de l'offre patrimoniale sur la liste du patrimoine mondial. Nous devons pouvoir identifier des biens qui portent cette valeur innovante. Nous devons pouvoir marketer ces attributs dans le contexte du patrimoine mondial. Vous conviendrez avec moi que nous avons fait les premiers pas, mais la route reste assez longue. Je ne saurais terminer mon propos sans remercier tous les participants à cette série de réunions virtuelles. Je renouvelle également ma sincère gratitude à nos partenaires stratégiques qui nous permettent d'avancer dans ce programme. Il s'agit notamment de l'Université du Cap, du Collège universitaire de Londres, notamment l'École d'architecture de Barlette, de l'ICROM, de l'ICOMOS, de l'UCN et bien sûr du Centre de patrimoine mondial de l'UNESCO qui nous appuie par ses conseils. Il ne me reste qu'à vous remercier encore et vous souhaiter des délibérations encore plus fructueuses dans le futur. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much, merci beaucoup, and it has been a pleasure, and thank you so much for the support that you give us as part of the African and World Heritage Fraternity. That is much, much appreciated. There is the request that today we haven't smiled. So if we don't mind, can we just all switch on our cameras so that we can have a group photo? That's one of the, so can we please switch on our cameras and smile for a group photo? I also realized that Professor Bokum is with us as one of the most senior African heritage experts. How are you, Prof. Bokum? Jobs, are you set with your camera?
Yes, I am.
We are all smiling.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So colleagues, thank you very much for these very enriching discussions and so much food for thought. And let us keep these conversations ongoing, and we will be sharing with you the draft documents as they become ready, but feel free to have exchanges and let us keep the spirit of modern heritage of Africa going from Edward Dennison, myself, as well as the organizers of this meeting. I thank you for listening, and also not forgetting our friends at the Getty Conservation Institute for being with us in the early hours of morning. From Edward Dennison and myself, thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Nabondeli yo moninga ofingi ngai pamba mobali wana ye moko alingi ngai mingi na mokili oyo mwasi ya kobenga mobali te ye moko ayaki na ndako na ngai nayambi ye. Ya kobenga mobali te ye moko ayaki na ndako na ngai nayambi ye bande kwatatika kofinga ngai nazali na likambo te o mama ye moko mipesi nyonso na ngai foti yanga te ya ye moko soko ozali na likambo motema nzela ya biro ezali pamba mama kasi ya kodongola ngai na nzela e likambo nalingi te o. Soko zali na likambo motema nzela ya biro ezali pamba mama kasi ya kodongola ngai na nzela e likambo nalingi te o. Eba oh mama yangana yo bane kwa tadi Natalia pambadi mami bane kwa tadi.
Okay, Edward, are you there?
Shadrach, well done.
Oh, well done to the well done to the team.
I'm very envious of you sitting on that beach.
Oh, we'll have to the beach when we go to Gori Island, Senegal.
Is it?
Welcome, you're welcome. Welcome.
So, Mike.
Hakum, I'm just quickly going to remove you for a closed meeting if you don't mind.
Is he?
Thank you.
I think Mike and Shadrach have logged off.
Yeah.
Sorry, Shahid, I'm not thinking.
Yeah, because it has been a long day. I'm also wondering whether we don't need to organize something short for maybe Wednesday or Thursday.
We can try. I've got quite a full week this week, but yeah.
If not, we can try and do it by email.
Yeah.
Because it's also 6 and unless if there is something that we need from Jacques and Janet and colleagues, but which we can also request by email. Hi, Dedre, how are you?
Hi, Shadrach. Good, thanks.
Thanks,
how
everyone.
How is the Cape of good weather?
Yeah, it was very hot today.
Everybody else has been removed from the meeting.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you all for your support. It has been outstanding. It's such a help to have such a reliable backup.
Been our pleasure, Ed.
Thanks.
Jacques is the real savior.
I'll just circulate the Excel file and the small Word file that I was taking notes in. I might send them to the same email that Janet's been circulating the spreadsheets. And I'll send a little explainer, but I think we have to meet to go through those notes sometime soon. All right, Shadrach?
Yeah, sure. That would work. And then yeah, let's take it up from there. And we will also engage with Shahid, so that if our colleagues need information for the September event, then they have what they need.
Yeah.
And also ensuring that they have that information in good time. And so we have seen what works, and if there are things that we think we could include, then we must also keep having conversations with them. So that is something that perhaps we need to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, yeah. Very good. Well, I'll let you guys get to your dinner. Must be almost that time. It's a long day for you.
All good. I've also just on the chat put 2 screenshots that I've taken of the group photo. It's both the same. So we were enough to fit onto one of my screens. So you can just choose which one you prefer and then use it. So I've just quickly shared it for you as well in the WhatsApp chat.
Okay. No.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mania.
We've also recorded to the cloud. So you should, once this is done, then you should get a notification that the recording is available. If not, I will, if I only get the notification, then I'll send it on to everyone.
Thank you once more, and you guys have a great evening. And yeah, I see it's raining here, so let me enjoy the very bad weather.
Sure. Thank you, Shadrach.
Thanks ever so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. Bye.